Guys, so here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about the area of a circle. Now, we talked about in class, to find the area of a circle, the formula that we need is pi r squared, and that will give us the area. Now, what happens if we're only given the diameter? Our formula says we need the radius to figure out the area. But we know from our last video and from class that the diameter, so half the diameter, is equal to our radius. So if we just take our diameter, divide it by 2, we'll get our radius, and now we'll be able to do our formula to find the area of a circle or a disk. Remember, if you see the word disk in the problem, they're almost always asking you to solve area. So let's take a look at our very first problem. So we have the radius of a circle is 2.8 centimeters, and they're asking us to calculate the area. Well, we know pi times the radius squared will give us area. And we're given the radius. So all we have to do is go pi times the radius, which is 2.8 centimeters, squared, and we should get our answer. So we go pi times 2.8 squared, and we get 24.63 centimeters. Now, if you don't have the pi button on your calculator, you can go 3.14 times 2.8 times 2.8, and you should get roughly the same answer. So I got 24.61. The reason why it's a little bit off is because pi is an infinite number. It just keeps going, and we just shortened it to make our lives a little bit easier. Both of these answers are considered correct. Okay? Now here's what happens if we have a question like this where we're given the diameter. So we're told the diameter of a circle is 19 centimeters. And we need the radius because we said our formula is pi r squared gives us the area. But we need a radius. Well, we already know that half of the diameter will give us the radius. So we go 19 divided by 2 because we want half of it. Okay, so that's all we need to do. We get 9.5. And now we're able to go and calculate the area of our circle. So if we go pi times 9.5 centimeters squared. Okay, so we just do that, pi times 9.5 squared. That gives us 283.52. And we can check this again, where if we just go 3.14 times 9.5 times 9.5, so 3.14 times 9.5 times 9.5, we get 283.38. Like I told you guys, pi is an infinite number. It goes on forever. Because we're off by this tiny little bit, it's still considered correct, so don't worry. Now what happens if we're given the circumference of a circle? So they ask us about the circumference. Okay, well, we have to work backwards. So we know that the circumference of a circle, and we know that can be either 2 pi r will give us the circumference, or pi times the diameter will give us the circumference. But our formula for area is pi r squared. So we know that we want to do a formula that gets us the radius. So we're going to work backwards. We know that 2 times pi times the radius is going to give us 402 centimeters. So we work backwards. We do the reciprocal of 2 pi. So 1 over 2 pi, 1 over 2 pi. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 2 pi divided by 2 pi is 1. 1 times the radius will give us the radius. 1 divided by 1 is 1. And now we just divide 402 divided by 2 divided by pi gives us 63.98. We now have the radius of our circle, which means we can now use our area formula. So we're going to go pi times the radius, which we just figured out is 63.98, squared. So 63.98 squared times pi is going to give us 1,286.03 centimeters squared, which is the one mistake that I made up above, guys, is whenever you're dealing with area, your answer has to be in centimeters squared. If you leave out centimeters squared, you lose marks. So this is a careless mistake to make. Make sure that when you're dealing with area, you have your centimeters squared. Okay? So let's look at another example. Okay, so we're told now that the area of a disk, so now we know the area is 200.96 centimeters squared. So we know our formula for area is pi times the radius squared will give us the area. They want us though to calculate the radius. So we need to isolate the radius. So we're just going to do what we did before, but we're going to go a little bit further in our working backwards. So we have pi times the radius squared is equal to 200.96 centimeters squared. Well, we need to isolate our radius, so we're going to do the reciprocal. 1 over pi, 1 over pi, 1 divided by 1 is 1, pi divided by pi is 1. 1 times radius squared will give us radius squared, and 1 divided by 1 is 1, and 200.96 divided by pi is going to give us 63.96. Okay, so 200.96 divided by pi gives us 63.96. So we have the radius squared though. We need to isolate r. We need to get rid of this squared. And the way we do that is we square root both sides of the equation. So the square root of the radius squared will give us the radius, and the square root of 63.96 is 7.99. Doing that, we figured out the radius. Some of you are like, well, how do you get radius squared? Remember, if I go variable times a variable, radius times radius will give me the radius squared. And then to work backwards from that, to get rid of the radius squared, or to cancel it out, the square root of the radius squared will give me just the radius. So the last problem we're going to look at is we're told that the area of a circle is 288 centimeters squared, and they want us to calculate the circumference. Well, same thing, pi times the radius squared gives us 288. We have to isolate our r, so we put both sides over 1, do the reciprocal of 1 over pi. 1 divided by 1 is 1, pi divided by pi is 1. We're left with radius squared. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 288 divided by pi will give me 91.6, or 91.67. I do the square root to isolate my r, but remember, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other, and that means that my radius is 9.57. Now that I have the radius, I can calculate the circumference. So we know that 2 times pi times the radius will give me the circumference. I now have my radius, so 2 times pi times the radius, which is 9.57. So 2 times pi times the radius, so 9.57, gives me 60.13 centimeters. So if you guys are good, you see this is not that difficult. It's just a lot of making sure that you remember your formulas and you remember how to do them. Okay, that's the key thing. Remembering your formulas and remembering which formula to use at which time. So I hope this video helps you guys study. I hope you guys are prepared for your quiz and later on your test. That's it. If you have any questions, you know you can come see me at tutorials every day 2 and day 6. I hope this helps you guys out. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.